You're scrolling through your phone late at night. You see a name, someone you used to be close with, someone who used to know you, and now they're just a memory, a contact you'll never text, a person you chose to walk away from. And maybe you feel guilty about it. Maybe people have asked why you cut them off. Maybe you've wondered if something's wrong with you for being able to let go so easily. But here's the truth. You're not cold, you're not heartless, and you're not broken. There's real psychology behind why some people can cut off old friends without looking back. And once you understand it, you'll stop apologizing for protecting your peace. So let's talk about what's actually happening when you cut off old friends. Because this isn't cruelty, this isn't avoidance. It's a form of self-preservation that most people don't recognize as healthy. And it says more about your growth than it does about your loyalty. First, let's be clear about what cutting someone off actually means. It's not anger, it's not revenge, it's not even always a conscious decision. Sometimes it's just a quiet realization that this person doesn't fit your life anymore, that the version of you they knew doesn't exist, that holding on to the friendship would mean shrinking yourself back into someone you've outgrown. And so you stop reaching out, you stop responding, you let the connection fade. Not because you hate them, but because staying connected would cost you more than letting go. Here's what people don't understand. Friendships aren't sacred just because they're old. Longevity doesn't equal value, and some people stay in friendships out of obligation, out of guilt, out of fear of being seen as the bad guy. But if you're someone who cuts off old friends, you've learned something most people resist, that you don't owe anyone access to your life just because they were there before, that loyalty to yourself matters more than loyalty to a past version of a relationship, and that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is walk away. Now, let's talk about why this happens. One reason people cut off old friends is growth, and not just any growth. The kind of growth that changes your values, your priorities, your understanding of who you are. And when you grow, you start to notice patterns in your relationships that you couldn't see before. You notice the friend who only calls when they need something, the one who dismisses your feelings, the one who keeps you small because your growth threatens theirs. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And staying in that dynamic starts to feel like betraying yourself. So you leave. Not out of anger, but out of clarity.
Here's another layer. People who cut off old friends often have a low tolerance for inauthenticity. You can sense when a friendship is being held together by history instead of connection, when conversations feel forced, when you're performing a version of yourself that no longer exists. And that performance, that pretending, it drains you. Because you're not just spending time with someone, you're managing their perception of who you used to be. And at some point, you realize it's easier to let go than to keep pretending. So you do. And people call it cold, but it's not cold, it's honest. But here's what makes this complicated. Cutting off old friends often comes with guilt because you've been taught that good people stay, that loyalty means enduring, that walking away makes you selfish. And so even when you know the friendship isn't serving you, even when you feel lighter without it, there's this voice that says you're doing something wrong. But that voice isn't your intuition, it's conditioning. It's the part of you that was taught to prioritize other people's comfort over your own truth. And unlearning that takes courage most people never access. Here's where it gets deeper. For some people, cutting off old friends is a trauma response. And I don't mean that negatively. I mean that if you grew up in environments where relationships were unstable, where people left, where trust was broken, your nervous system learned to leave first. It learned that staying too long means getting hurt, that attachment is dangerous, that the safest way to protect yourself is to cut ties before someone can abandon you. And even now, even in healthy friendships, that wiring can activate. You might cut people off not because they hurt you, but because you're afraid they will. And recognizing that pattern, that's not something to shame, it's something to understand. Now, let's talk about something most people miss. Cutting off old friends isn't always about them. Sometimes it's about you, about the person you were when you knew them. and staying connected to them keeps you tethered to a version of yourself you're trying to move past. Maybe they remind you of a time in your life that was painful. Maybe they knew you when you were struggling, when you were lost, when you didn't know who you were, and being around them pulls you back into that identity. So you distance yourself, not because they did anything wrong, but because you need space to become someone new. And some friendships can't survive that kind of transformation. Here's the shift. Cutting off old friends doesn't make you a bad person, but it is worth examining, because sometimes it's healthy, sometimes it's necessary, and sometimes it's avoidance. Sometimes it's a pattern of leaving before you have to be vulnerable, of cutting people off before they get too close, of protecting yourself so thoroughly that no one can reach you. And there's a difference between boundary setting and self-isolation, and only you can know which one you're living in. So the question isn't whether cutting people off is right or wrong. The question is, are you doing it from a place of self-protection or self-preservation? And those aren't the same thing. Here's the compassionate truth. If you've cut off old friends, it doesn't mean you don't care. It doesn't mean you're incapable of connection. It means you've learned that not every relationship is meant to last forever, that people can be important to you and still not belong in your life anymore, that you can love someone from a distance, that you can honor what a friendship gave you without forcing it to continue. And that maturity, that ability to let go without bitterness, that's not coldness. That's emotional intelligence. So if you're someone who cuts off old friends, here's what I want you to remember. You're not heartless. You're not running away. You're making choices about who gets access to your energy, your time, your inner world. And those choices matter, because your life isn't a museum where you have to preserve every relationship just because it existed. It's a living, evolving space, and you get to decide who belongs there. And sometimes that means letting people go, not with anger, not with resentment, but with the quiet understanding that not everyone is meant to walk with you forever. And that's okay. The people who are meant to stay will stay. The ones who align with who you're becoming will grow with you. And the ones who don't, the ones you've cut off, they served their purpose. They were part of your story, and you don't owe them the rest of your chapters. You don't owe anyone a seat at your table just because they were there when the table was empty. You get to choose. And choosing yourself, choosing your peace, choosing to walk away from what no longer fits, that's not betrayal. That's growth. So here's my question for you. Have you ever cut off an old friend? And if so, what did that teach you about yourself? Drop a comment and share. I'd love to hear your experience. And if this video made you feel understood, consider subscribing. We explore the psychology of being human in ways that honor the choices you make for your own well-being. Next time, we're talking about people who feel exhausted after socializing, even with people they love. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for being here. I'll see you in the next video.